Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hey.
Hello.
My God.
my God. Yep, that's what I like. That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear.
All right. Hey.
When I
hi, everybody.
enter a room. Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is not. My name's Tom Ryman.
It sure is. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Dave.
And we just watched. We just watched The Forbidden Room. Dun dun dun. Can't go in there.
No, that's
Can't
right.
go.
It's right there in the name. Why would you do such a fool thing as to visit the Forbidden Room, Dave?
Hello, I'm Marv. Today we're going to discuss baths.
No, you can't do
We
that.
both did because we're your fools.
We are your fools. Specifically, we are Steven's fools. Steven, our patron producer, who said you need to watch The Forbidden Room. Thank you so much for your support.
Yeah.
As always.
Thanks.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk about this movie.
No, not really.
This is a 2015 film.
Yeah.
It is abstract. It is not a movie. This is one of those movies where, like, I don't know what you're going to say about it, Tom, but any answer is the right answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this movie asks a lot of us. It is, I would argue, a sketch comedy movie.
It's a sketch comedy movie. Yeah, it's basically an anthology film where the different vignettes, the characters in the vignettes will start telling a story that will then become another vignette, that will then become another vignette, and they double back on themselves. They revisit certain key framing stories, and the whole movie sort of progresses like that and kind of comes to a finale that seems like the whole thing was kind of like a riff on storytelling in general. It's real. It's extremely surreal, but there's it's also like made in old timey movie style. Like there's a lot of in-camera techniques and like filming techniques that are from like early days of cinema.
Yeah, there's rear projection. People will say a line and then the line will be on screen like a
silent movie,
like pre-talkie. Yeah. It is, so the basic plot is, it's a wild thing to say.
Yeah.
But like the through line and the name The Forbidden Room.
The basic plot. There is no such thing as a basic plot to this movie.
Well, there is, okay, so there is there's a running thread of a submarine.
Right.
And their crew is trying to survive with low oxygen levels, and they're going room to room, and every room kind of unfolds to these stories and sub-stories, right?
Yeah.
And we end up back at the sub going into the Forbidden Room, which is the captain's room, that they find the captain incapacitated. Most of the men die, and there's this woodsman character who
crawls in out of the bilge or something. It's he just magically appeared. There's a lot of that in this movie.
It's unclear.
Yeah.
And he was dealing with this love, I think Margot, or I forget. Yeah,
Margot.
I think in his world, and she's also the captain's daughter. And they reunite at the end.
There's a bomb. There's like this exploding jelly that they're transporting, and they can't rise above a certain. It's like a speed situation, Dave. It's a speed sitch where they can't rise above a certain depth, or else this explosive jelly will explode, and the explosive jelly transforms into Margot, Dave.
Right, that's what happens. Okay. And then they go through the Book of Climaxes, and it kind of just shows all the endings to all the sub stories.
Sort of, but also
sort of.
Some of them are just like I took it less as, because there's so many of them. So there's way more. I felt like there's way more than there were actual stories. So it seemed like they were just going through like different sort of absurd, cliched climaxes that they could think
Yeah.
of. Like there's one where it's two Zeppelins crashing into each other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so the genre here is absurdist comedy.
Yeah.
Did you watch a lot of Monty Python?
Mm-hmm.
I realized watching this, like Monty Python's a now for something completely different, in which they took all their sketches and made it a movie, and they all kind of intertwined together. All of those Monty Python movies, I very vividly remember the first half of, and then not the second half. And I always wondered why, and then I realized why. It's because I was always high and would fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that goes. And that's kind of what this feels like to me, which is that I don't know about you, but I watched this in the fucking middle of the day, just dead sober,
Yep.
just drinking a coffee.
Yep, I threw this on at 6 a.m. this morning.
Yeah. And I don't think that's the way you're supposed to watch this film.
Maybe not.
Yeah, and that goes
Maybe
all the
not.
way to my question, Tom. How did you like this film?
That is an interesting question, Dave. I enjoyed kind of the idea of this film, and I enjoy a lot of the things that it's doing, where it's sort of riffing on old filmmaking techniques and kind of make the whole thing looks really cool. It looks like
Right.
it basically looks like the Tonight Smashing Pumpkins music video.
Right.
All the way through, and I really like that aesthetic, and that's cool. And like the humor was funny for a while, but this movie really wears out its welcome after a while.
So I was laughing out loud in the first half,
Mhm.
and then I slowly stopped.
Yeah.
I want to share something with you. When I was in high school, I made a short. Well, actually, I think so. I made a movie.
Okay.
And the movie was a series of sketches that would intertwine with each other. They were stories within stories within stories, and they were shot. It was shot in a purposefully artsy way.
Did you
that
make?
I was trying to make it a mockery. So it was kind of more like Darren Aronofsky's Pie, like that gritty black and white stuff, which was also good for when you're making something on the cheap.
Okay.
I made
So
that-
did you make The Forbidden Room?
Kind of.
Okay.
That's the thing. Is I kind of made this movie in high school, but I made it 50 minutes. I didn't make it like 2 hours, 10 minutes. And
Well-
the reason why was because I knew that people can't handle this at such a length. That's all.
I mean, it was a high school movie, so really, your 50-minute high school movie is the equivalent of a 2-hour film.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it probably feels like 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm not naming the film because I'm ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't good. I liked all the work people did for it, but you know what I'm saying? Where it's like it's a comedy thing I made in high school.
Oh, yeah.
You could probably imagine the horror that is.
Yeah,
that movie.
I made a short in high school that's called Jaws 2000, which is just a spoof of Jaws, but it all just takes place in the street. Like the shark is just a guy with a fin on his back running around.
That sounds fun.
No one is ever going to see that movie.
Right? Yeah. It is, it's locked away.
Yeah, it is locked away in the Disney vault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. My point being that, like, I also really like this format. I have a respect for it to the point that I had done it.
Yeah, clearly.
But too long. Even the director, I was looking this movie up, said that the original cut was too long. And he was like, even for me, the person who made this, I was like, nope, can't make it this long. And he cut it down. Still
didn't cut it down enough because this movie is a rotund 2 hours. That's
Yeah.
too long. This movie needed to be about 80 minutes.
Yes, it's too long for something that is generally disconnected.
By and large, there's two main storylines. There's the guys in the submarine, and then a woodsman crawls out of the bilge, and he's got a storyline of trying to get a team of, what do they call them, sapling jacks, because they're aspiring lumberjacks. They're not quite brawny enough to be lumberjacks yet, so they're sapling jacks. And his love Margot has been kidnapped, and he's trying to recruit a team of other sapling jacks to walk across a frozen wasteland to rescue her from a cave full of the villainous Red Wolves clan. And that's the other main storyline. We come back to those two a lot, and the rest really is just these disconnected stories that people start telling within these vignettes, which
Yes.
I wanted to say each of those on their own is pretty great. Like they all have the vibe.
Right.
They all have the vibe of an Adult Swim sketch or I
think you should leave even.
I think you should leave. Yeah, I kept thinking of, I mean, obviously we texted each other and we said Tim and Eric. But then as I was watching it, I kept thinking of like Cheddar Goblin and Too Many Cooks.
Yeah, this is so like right away, my recommendation is like, yeah, see this when you're not like obligated to sit and watch the whole fucking thing.
Watch it in pieces. Yeah, because like there's, even though I said the movie wears out its welcome, it's not any of the vignettes' fault necessarily, although I did start to get kind of not a great vibe from some of the vignettes.
Well, that's so. I want to talk about the tone and like because we're making it out to be a really hardcore comedy, but it's also not quite that, which makes it interesting. Sorry. So what do you mean with some of the vignettes?
Okay, well, just to finish the thought that began that thought was just each of the vignettes on their own, like deserves to be seen and is good enough, to stand on its own with this sort of bizarrely, it's totally surreal, totally absurdist humor. It's just, after 2 hours of it, the ones toward the back half of the film, we're just kind of like, all right, I get it. Like, let's go.
Right. After a while, there's nothing wrong with those sketches. You're just tired. Yeah. I don't know. That's why these shows are like 22 minutes, right?
Yeah. It's, the vignette where it's the trained psychiatrist that goes into the bone doctor that goes into the skeleton women abducting him.
Women's skeletons, yeah.
Yeah. Now, each of those things on their own, I mean, I don't know. There's parts of all three of those little sections that I did think were funny just because there's a lot of it is just so ridiculous. It's just the silliest thing you can think of in a lot of cases. But in those vignettes, there's also like this kind of simmering tone of sexual violence. In those, and I was like, I don't like this vibe.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I wanted to talk about with tone, which is like, this isn't like, it's so hard to explain how this is also a work of art. Like, and so there's parts where it's like kind of dark or like it isn't trying to just be funny. It's this whiplash. Where, like, for example, the women's skeletons is hilarious only because they pop onto screen and then the title comes up that just says women's skeletons.
Right, and he's powerless. He's powerless to resist them because he's a doctor who loves bones. Like it's
exactly.
Yeah.
And then they introduce skeletal insurance defrauders.
Yeah.
And we learn that they are making him commit insurance fraud by taking him to the skull-faced insurance office.
Yeah.
And then the title on screen, again, like a silent film, says, forced to wear a leotard.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is incredibly absurd, but it's also very uncomfortable.
Yes.
You know what? Like, it's sort of like Kids in the Hall kept coming up in my mind because you think of like the sausages sketch on Kids in the Hall. Did you ever see that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. The sausages sketch is like shot like a short film, and it's like a dystopian world where this guy has to keep bringing sausages to his elderly, I think, father, and it's like got that 1984-esque where he's like trying to break out from this situation, and he meets a woman he's interested in, and it's funny but not haha funny, where you're just like, what the fuck am I watching? It's definitely funny in places. But it's also like kind of uncomfortable. Like when the father eats the sausages, it's really disgusting.
Yes, there's an aspect to this movie of the discomfort level where it's not just and I've seen some other things that I don't necessarily want to call out by name, where it is sort of, there is that absurdist tone, but there's also this real grotesque bent to it.
Yeah. What's interesting is it's not gross out. It's not shock humor.
No, it's not. It's not like
using art to make you uncomfortable.
It's not like the Greasy Strangler.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this isn't. Yeah. At no point. It's more of just like there's a weird use of nudity in this. That's not. There's that like that I just didn't expect. There's like weird like sexual parts.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not like mean-spirited. It's just like, oh,
but
like
they're
that's interesting. Like that's a weird.
but
That's a weird choice.
They're a little uncomfortable. Like it's it's like I said, it's like there's not. I said there's like a simmering sexual violence. There's never any full-on sexual violence in this movie. There's just like this weird, uncomfortable tone around some depictions of nudity and sensuality in this movie.
Right. And there's like a little bit of just, the fucking mustache.
The mustache is so weird. Oh my God.
The idea is a man gets murdered, and he, the mustache, ghost of the mustache.
Yeah, it's the mustache. It's like his mustache was sentient and is trying to make his grieving widow happy, so it keeps just jumping to other people.
Right, and the mustache is depicted, or the father, by Udo Kier.
Sure
Should
is.
note, Udo Kier is in this. By the way, it's also like a sketch movie in that people play multiple roles, including Udo Kier.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine Udo Kier as part of a comedy trope, and that's what this is.
Yes.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's it's
And
pretty
like
strange.
their child gets the mustache,
Mhm.
and then she's like rubbing his lip, and it's just like, this is uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But I loved the part where the child puts on a record of the dad just saying yes or no.
Right,
That
and
she talks to, and in between the yes or no, he's just like coughing. And it's just really fucking weird.
Yeah.
And then there was the caption, "Mother's flapjacks have never been so frightening."
It's a weird through line with flapjacks. Like the guys in the submarine are eating them because they're like, there's air pockets in these flapjacks. It's going to make our air last twice as long. So they'll pull out flapjacks and start eating them when they need air. This movie is fucking strange.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the actual book ending, which is How to Take a Bath.
Oh,
the
yeah.
movie starts with an instructional video called How to Take a Bath, and it was very smart to do because they start with Marv, who definitely swings. He's like this old guy with his chest exposed in his bathrobe, and like right away, it's probably their most playful one because it's an instruction, but then he's saying the phrasing, or he says, "Today the Japanese have bisexual bathing," and then winks. It's like, what?
It's the most clearly like an Adult Swim short that you would see. Yeah.
He says, like, you can bathe every other day or even every day. How do I know this? People have told me. Like that's the way. And it's like, okay, good starting point, right?
Yeah.
You getting me? And then we go into the bathwater, and that's where the submarine is. And you really don't know at first what you're seeing because they're very melodramatic. And then they call themselves the Jelly Boys. And again, that's why it really feels like I think you should leave, where you're like, are you being serious? You know? It's hard to tell. But they do this thing where they're like, they throw things away. There's the part where they're talking about what Murgle's cave?
Yeah. That's where Margot's being held.
Right, and someone's just like, "Look, a model of the cave." He's just holding.
This will help us plan our rescue mission, and he just suddenly has this full scale model of the cave.
Right, and so we have this real again Monty Python Kids in the Hall.
Yeah,
but then on top of it, we haven't really talked about the visuals, because like we said, it looks like an old timey movie, but then it's also almost broken. Like the one I think of is the Night Crooner. So just to go through the plot.
Oh my God. I forgot about that one. The Derrieres. The Derriere song. Holy shit.
It depicts the movie perfectly, which is that. So how we get to this point is they go to rescue Margot, which seems to be doing just fine.
She's running the Red Wolves. Yeah. When they get there.
Yeah. It's just a meat market for her.
Yeah.
And they do these trials, finger snapping.
They're all silly. It's very Monty Python.
All silly.
Yeah.
I think it's most inspired by Monty Python, and I say that because of the visuals. So it goes into her dream, and in her dream she's doing a nightclub singing where she's doing these weird convulsions and singing, and then the Night Crooner comes on. And for people, okay, so
I don't know how to describe the kind of visual effect he is.
Have you seen A Scanner Darkly?
Yes.
Okay. And for people listening, you could Google The Scanner Darkly, the suits that they wear. And the idea in Scanner Darkly, it's one of my favorite visuals in a movie, is that the characters wear these suits that protect their identity. And the way they do that is that every quadrant of the suit like constantly flips through like an identity. So it's like this staticky
kaleidoscope almost.
Figure. Yeah, that's just constantly, every part of them is constantly looks like something else. And it's really cool. The crooner shows up and he's kind of like that, only it's like old-timey collages. Like what we're seeing, I think, is like a morphing of different pictures, like old-timey pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just like this. I love the visual because it's like putting a visual to like a Lovecraftian like entity. You know what I mean? Where it's like intangible.
Yeah.
And this Nightcrawler he would be a horror movie character. Another example is like in VHS where there's that creature that only comes up as static.
Yeah, you can't see him. It's the Jason, basically the Jason Voorhees.
Yeah. It's this intangible, terrifying figure. And he is, again, worthy of a horror movie. And you look at it and you're like, that's fucking beautiful. And it's also kind of collagey. So there's the Terry Gilliam of it all, right? Like this reminds me of Gilliam in the way Gilliam used to do collages. This is almost like a collage of old movies.
Yeah, it's not a super sophisticated effect. Like it doesn't feel out of place with the movie presenting itself. Like I guess we'll talk a little bit about this later, but it's kind of the idea is like it's a collection of lost films, which is something that the director talked about.
That makes sense.
So it doesn't feel out of place. It looks like something you could create just by scratching onto the film directly.
Yeah, it really feels like an art piece, like and something you'd see in college. That doesn't mean it's bad.
No, not at all.
Just means it's like way more experimental than like most films.
It kind of reminds me of the Doug Hertzfeldt short Rejected.
Yes,
where there's
Rejected's a good comparison for sure.
Yeah, certain visuals in Rejected. If you listeners have seen that, if not, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I think we're making enough comparisons that like another one is like, you know, that glitch effect you'll see on like TikTok where like images glitch into each other and it's like this really like modern artistic style, or like when you see a GIF that's like, this is what it's like on LSD, even though that it's usually a lie, but it's doing these weird glitch effects. Like it's all in that ballpark, which is like you're doing something visually that for the most part you never really see anybody do. And whenever I see it, I go, why doesn't more like horror movies use this? Why isn't it a regular thing? This is all to say the Night Crooner is that. And then he is singing a song about how much he loves asses. There's a quote, I am plagued by bottoms. I think I couldn't tell if he was Udo Kier or not. Because again, the nature of this,
I don't think so. I thought it was him at first, but then I looked up in the credits and it didn't seem like he was listed as that character. So maybe not, but maybe
not.
Anyway, he's a guy that loves asses so much he keeps going and getting a lobotomy to cure his ass love.
They keep cutting to a doctor just cutting off more and more of his brain, and this really grotesque shot of a brain being dissected, and then like a montage of asses like floating in the air, and him being like, I just love them. So it's this thing where I'm watching it, I'm like, I guess this is exactly for me because I liked it. But it was like, this is both funny and horrifying.
It's unsettling.
Yeah, and deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
And you're making me feel like 7 different emotions at once.
Like it escalates to the point where the last time he goes to the doctor has his arm up to his elbow in the guy's skull, pulling pieces of his brain out. Like that's how extreme it gets in that scene, but he's still singing this very funny song about how he just can't get enough derrieres.
Yeah. And so like I think that gives people, that to me was like the entire movie, which is like this intense short circuiting of like what the fuck is happening. And that goes right into the hardest I laughed, and I don't feel ashamed about it, which is like it's a shot of like an island and a guy just jumps into the shot with tentacles coming out of his mouth, and then hard cut to the title
Squid
Squid
Thief.
Theft. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck me.
Yep.
And then it's him running, and then it cuts to punishable by death. And it's this squid thief getting killed
Yeah.
on this island.
Yep.
And it's intercut with a volcano that they then like sacrifice things to.
Yeah, like sweet tapioca.
Yeah, and
And
fish and
Fish,
a tire.
a tire. Yeah.
There's so many of these where
Yeah.
I just have to shout, like Oracle Bones Hospital.
Yes.
Great fucking name.
Mhm. And as the doctors were, it just keep the word bones will just flash on screen randomly. Like he loves bones so much, and that also gets uncomfortable because it's this. He's working on this woman who's in a motorcycle wreck, and he starts like cracking her bones one by one, and it's like it's weird.
Yeah, she's like into it, or he's into
and
it.
they keep flashing bones on screen, and this is obviously. Clearly, this is a guy who is eventually seduced by skeleton women because of his love for bones.
Right.
It's just, I guess all of this explanation is to make it clear that these sketches are really silly and absurd, but there's also like this undercurrent throughout that's just like a constant sound of flies buzzing. Like so it's like just this persistent
It's
feeling.
Lynchian. It's slightly off. Everything's slightly off.
It's weird. Yeah, it's off-putting in a way.
Would you believe that critics loved this and audiences did not?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have no problem believing that.
Right. And I feel like we're in a unique position where it's like, I think we both appreciate absurdist humor. So it's like the humor got me in a weird way where I was like, this is actually the kind of humor that I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also willing to entertain movies like this that are artsy in wild ways. So like, that's why, I think we both are in a alignment where it's like this. I liked what this was. It just wore me down.
It's too long
because I had to watch the whole thing. Yeah,
it's too long.
Skinamarink, which we covered a few weeks back, is a similar idea where it's like I really respect this and I like it, but at least my view on that was I was just like I don't know if I need this much of it.
Yeah, I would. I wasn't on that episode, but I would agree that the back half of Skinamarink especially goes on for a little too long.
Yeah, where it's like I like what you're doing. It's just what you're doing, like without a narrative. Skinamarink has a narrative, but you know, I mean, like this movie without a clear narrative, it's harder. It's a lot harder to keep.
I'll say that's
my attention on it
for sure. I think the constant feeling of something's off here helps a little bit. I mentioned Cheddar Goblin. If you listeners haven't seen that, it's from a movie called Mandy with Nicolas Cage from a few years back. And there's a commercial. That whole movie is horror surreal though. There's some stuff that's funny in it, but funny in just a cosmic brain shredding way will just make you laugh because you're helpless to do anything else. And one scene in that movie is Nicolas Cage stops and watches this commercial on television for this macaroni and cheese. It's called Cheddar Goblin, and it was made by the people that made that very famous Adult Swim short Too Many Cooks, which was just totally absurd and it just kept escalating in its absurdity. And Cheddar Goblin is just this commercial of kids eating macaroni and cheese with this little weird off-putting ghoulie like goblin mascot, and it becomes more and more grotesque as it goes on to the point where nobody's acting like anything is wrong. It's funny, but also it feels disquieting. That's this entire movie.
Yeah.
And
I think
that thread helps it, I think, because I just real quick, I do like absurdist humor, but it can grate on me because I think it's very easy to do it badly. Because it's like, I'm just going to say the most random thing I can think of. I'm like, well, no, that's not funny. Like,
right, and I would argue this is done well.
Yes,
same with I Think You Should Leave, which is another one where when you watch that long enough, you go, oh, there is a structure here. Like, and that's part of it is like you still have to kind of know your structure and know what you're trying to do.
You need room. You need a place to go. Like the escalation is important. Like I mentioned with Too Many Cooks. Like so, yeah. there's definitely a structure to it. It's not completely formless.
Right. Yeah, I noticed with I Think You Should Leave, and this is another subject, but that they tend to have they tend to do similar formats in their sketches where you start with an odd duck. You start with someone who is not of this world, right?
Right.
Who is acting in a weird way. And then you say, okay, either we're going to escalate that person, people's reaction, or the reveal will be the rest of the world is also calibrated to that person. I think of like the give me that burger guy versus let me eat the receipt guy. Where eat the receipt guy, the reveal is like the entire world has lost their mind except for Jacob, whose birthday it is. You know what I mean? Where they all get into it.
Yeah.
So like I've noticed that's like a common thread they'll go back to, but it still like makes it really fun. Either one they do. So the point being that like, yeah, everything tends to have structure. This technically has structure, but its structure is more of a sketch show. And since it's so modular, it's like, yeah, you could stand to like cut it down a bit, right?
Trim some of it out. I do, or I don't know. I don't want to, because I do,
but also
I do really love the visuals, and I like the idea of, trying to like from what I read the same sort of information that, about the film and its directors. I had also read the thing about how he felt it was too long and cut like 10 or 12 minutes out of it.
Right.
In that same interview, he said kind of the genesis of this movie was taking titles of actual lost films and making what he thought that title would be.
That's such a good idea.
Right, yeah. And I love that idea. And the visuals of this movie and the way it's presented is so cool. There's like there's even like burn-in effects, like the film is tearing.
Yeah.
So it looks like you're like that, and that's another thing that adds to the disquieting thread that sort of is the most unifying thing here, is that you feel like you're watching something you shouldn't be watching.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to talk about. But with the disquieting stuff, just to finish that, is like, what we're realizing is like humor and abstract humor can be a big part of making people feel uneasy. Like you're saying, the Cheddar Goblin, where it's like, I think that's right after in Mandy, I won't spoil it, something tragic happens and he is broken. And he walks in and you see that on the TV. And it's a perfect example of like, is this fucking even real? You know what I mean?
It's not, and it's not even the tragedy of it. It's something tragic and insane happens.
Yeah.
Like it is so beyond reality what happens to him in the scene before that.
And I do think every generation has this. We've been referencing Monty Python. So obviously this is a long running thing. But what movies like, Skinamarink and Mandy even, and this, which is 2015, which I feel like is even before its time, is leading me to realize is that we are getting to a point where like we're hitting our abstract stride in this generation, and we're also seeing like the effects of Adult Swim, where like, the movie that's sweeping right now at the Critics Awards and nominations is Everything Everywhere All at Once, a movie that I would argue is so much more fast paced than anything that was ever nominated before for an Oscar, and so much weirder that it has like a kung fu fight where people have dildos up their asses, And it's that realization of like, you can say profound things or create like an artistic vision and still be like silly as shit. And I think there's always some element of that. I would argue, those old Monty Python, Terry Gilliam specifically, his work and stuff like that is like, yeah, there's always been this absurd humor mixed with art styles like this. It's just that like I've been noticing a lot of modern versions that I don't really think I saw in like the 2000s and 2010s. Although like, this is technically the 2010s.
It's 2015, and I don't remember when the Greasy Strangler came out, but like,
right,
that's an example of taking it to, I would argue, like the making it into a horror movie, basically.
Right. Yeah, where it's just, you feel like you're losing your mind watching it.
Yeah, it's so like it's like the feeling of somebody saying a funny joke and then the whole room laughing. and then they all keep laughing, and they keep laughing harder, and their faces get weirder as they're straining to keep laughing.
Yeah.
It's like
one of them dies.
Yeah, it's like that sort of like, Jesus Christ, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. And this movie has that, but it's way less abrasive.
Yeah.
I just need to note that.
I don't feel
Where
like
it's
this movie ever quite it's like horror adjacent, but it never goes into horrific, grotesque territory like the Greasy Strangler does.
Like, if you like Tim and Eric but think Tim and Eric's a little too gross, this would be good for you.
Yeah.
If you like Kids in the Hall, if you like I Think You Should Leave, just know that it has like a disturbing edge to it that isn't like explicitly showing anything. You just generally feel fucking gross.
You're feeling uncomfortable a lot of the time, yeah.
And so, I wanted to talk about the world itself because something occurred to me watching this, is how smart that premise that we're talking about is, looking like old movies. Because this movie couldn't have cost that much. Like, it's probably all going to Udo Kier. Because the way the way they created this world was very smart in that, I don't know, do you agree with me with this? I completely believed the world. And what I mean by that is I never felt taken out of it because it's all done in the old timey. So rear projection, for example, basic sets, like theater sets, like community theater sets. You know what I mean?
And a lot of rear projection just for people walking from one place to another.
Yeah. And so, but one of the things I noticed that was really sophisticated was the sound design. Everything is making a noise. You can hear the world in great detail. And the other thing about it that's really intentful is the lighting is gorgeous. Like, because they tint it all. It's all through a filter, but everything has to match through that filter. You know what I mean? And so there's rich lighting choices where it's like, it's very clear that this was made by an artist, someone who's not like, that's what we're saying, where it's like randomness, abstractness. It's really easy to use that as a crutch. As it is this style, you could hide your budget with this style, and you could also hide a lot of less skillful choices, but it feels like he's actually embracing it and showing off some really impressive cinematography and editing through this.
The editing in this movie is incredible.
Yeah, this movie was hard. It looks hard to make, despite the fact that it's made in a very cheap style, where even the acting again is like melodramatic. So no one has to even, but it's on purpose. So there's this like preciseness to that, where there's like a meta element where it's like, you need to act this way, but it needs to make people feel this way.
Those are half the punchlines in the film. Is a line being read in a way that in a weird way, but a way that's specifically weird.
Right. Yeah. So it's this layer, and like there's a discomfort that the weird doctor who has the guy in the cage who he then sleeps with the woman, and that's one where it's like he's so weirdly creepy, and she's so into him, and that dynamic is really like uncomfortable. But he's also like kind of funny, and it's this weird balance that everybody is kind of doing a great job. So like it is a fascinating film, you know, like I think if people are just into filmmaking, there's something to take away from that in this movie. Yeah, no,
I would definitely watch. That might be the best case scenario, is if you're just somebody who's really into the craft of filmmaking. You're probably going to get the most out of this movie, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. I think it's, I think it's overall, I'm like, I think this is a good movie. It's just a lot.
It's too much. It's too much birthday. Like it's, it's.
I noted it. Lug Lug is where I was like, I'm starting to fade. And I nothing against Lug Lug.
Lug Lug is nuts too.
Yeah.
I had started to fade around. Lug Lug's kind of what brought me back into it.
Oh, okay.
I had started to fade, although I liked the birthday penthouse, like the one where the guy's apartment is an elevator, and then he gets to the birthday penthouse.
Who's that actor? I knew that
actor. Oh shoot, he's actually a famous actor.
He is.
I looked him up and now I've forgotten who he was, but he's in a lot of things.
Yeah, that was a good one where he
but-
like is like covering up the bodies, and it's like
yeah, but
and then the witnesses, and he just puts drapes of fucking cloth over them.
they also appear out of nowhere. There's
Yeah, they
just
sure do.
suddenly witnesses in the room.
Yeah,
Like he shoots Udo Kier, the butler, in an empty room, and then suddenly there's more and more witnesses keep appearing. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I've got to get rid of the witness, and it gets to the point where he's just throwing sheets over them to get rid
Yeah.
of them.
it's real dumb. And then the birthday penthouse is
Yeah, and then it's like the
button on
game.
that.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
they gamed him.
Yeah, but also Udo Kier is like, isn't he the father with the mustache?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's real dream logic where
Yeah.
it's it all kind of morphs together where it's like, was he even killed then? Like, what does that mean?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's all like someone's writing it. No, that's later. There's also the talking bananas, which man,
Yeah.
it's
That
Goddamn.
Okay, I looked him up. The actor is Mathieu Almeric. I'm probably butchering his name, but he's in the Diving
Yeah.
Bell and the Butterfly, Grand Budapest Hotel, Munich. Diving Bell and the
Yeah.
Butterfly was his big one.
yeah. It makes sense why this had good actors because I think this director, I didn't look him up too much, but he seems to be like, making fucking art movies. He seems to have a credibility that he could make a movie like this,
It's
but yeah.
funny to watch people like Udo Kier and Charlotte Rampling in a movie like this.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
like imagining them reading it and being like,
Right, and-
okay.
That's why I'm like, this director probably made some shit
Right.
that they respected before.
He must have had a dazzling reel.
Yeah, or it was movie 43. This is basically artsy movie 43.
Yep. I had written that down to say that to you, and then I forgot. But yeah, it very much is movie. It's like Kentucky Fried Movie made by the artsiest art student, basically.
Yeah. And so it's like, I don't know, maybe he blackmailed them all. Fuck if I know.
Like movie 43.
Yeah, exactly. But I think at this point, if you're listening to this, you kind of know if this movie's for you
Yeah.
based on what we're saying. It was for me, but yeah, I do. This is every now and then I have this where like, and I just want to say again, thank you, Stephen, because I never would have seen this movie.
I never would have even heard of this movie.
Right. But there are times where I'm like, I wish I wasn't required to watch this because I think I would have enjoyed it if I could just watch it in pieces casually. You know what I mean? Which isn't to say, again, I wouldn't have seen it at all if it weren't for Steven. So I better seeing it than never seeing it. But it's one of those where I'm like, the only big hit I had against it was that it was like, I wish I was watching this like with my friends while high. Like that. And then I wish I could have just passed out while watching it or whatever. It's that kind of movie. It's a movie that you casually watch. You put on at a party.
It's a real big vibes movie,
Yeah, it's worth definitely sitting down and watching if you're into this stuff. But it's definitely also a movie that's like you can kind of have fun watching, and like freak people out and like, just enjoy it for what it is. You don't have to think about it too hard either.
No, it doesn't seem like there's any, like it deals with a couple of themes, but they're all pretty apparent.
Yeah, I think it's like it's abstract. It's like an abstract painting where it's like we're trying to make you feel stuff.
Yeah,
but like the artist isn't trying to say something really specific.
No, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like he's riffing a little bit on the storytelling and maybe the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
Especially with like the Book of Climaxes at the end, when it's just all these different off the wall finales. But yeah, it's more vibes. It's more like vibes.
Yeah, it's not even that pretentious, No. Like it feels like it's kind of taking the piss out of artsy films in its own way.
And like I said, one of the climaxes is two blimps crashing into each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And then two guys falling off a cliff and having a gunfight as they're falling off a cliff.
Right. Yeah, so it seems like it's the right time for shit like this.
Yeah.
But I keep going back to Everything Everywhere All at Once because what I'm also realizing is that you can take this style and actually tell a compelling story with it too. Like there's parts, like they use the device of the multiverse to basically do abstract film, right? With that movie.
Yeah.
And so like, that's what's interesting about this is like, I look at this and go, this is great as it is, But like, why aren't more movies utilizing these sort of abstract styles in a narrative? Because I think it's possible.
That's a big thought I kept having as I was watching this movie. It's like, man, I wonder if this filmmaker ever made a a more straightforward narrative in this style, because I bet that would be really something to see.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, I have no other thoughts on this.
No, me either. I don't want to repeat ourselves. So
yeah,
that's it.
Well,
that's all you get.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen, once again.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen.
He did this through our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We have custom We Just Watched episodes. We have exclusive podcasts on there for just $5 a month. You get access to Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. And yeah, check it out. We watch movies with our patrons every Friday night as well.
Yeah. Maybe we'll throw this one on. I don't know.
You can say.
Yeah. We also have a store. Head over to gamefullyunemployed.com where you'll find a link to our Teespring store. We have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of stuff. Yep. So slap your forbidden peepers on that.
Yeah.
It's the forbidden room full of all of our merch.
All of our forbidden merch.
Our forbidden merch. Udo Kier's in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah. He'll haunt you. If you buy a shirt, you guaranteed haunted by Udo Kier.
He packs them all.
Yeah.
Puts a little sticker of himself in each one.
Aww,
we should make a little Udo Kier sticker.
Absolutely. Done. Consider it done.
Yes.